In 1998, Sega would release their final competitor in the console wars, the Sega Dreamcast. A console that, unfortunately until 2019 at Salt Lake Gaming Con, I had no experience in ever playing. Alongside their prior financial and critical failures with the CD and 32X add-ons for the Sega Genesis, aka Mega Drive, and the Saturn, Sega would bow out of the console race and become a multi-platform developer. Of course, they were not willing to let their games be left behind, so they would port games of their last console to their former rivals. Most shockingly, even with Nintendo, as both Sonic Adventure games will be ported to the GameCube. Out of order, but I digress. But the first Sonic Adventure game, known as Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut, would also get a port to Windows PC. And in 2010, the game would receive yet another port, this time on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and the PC. Again. Anyway, how does Sonic's first Dreamcast romp fare, mostly with this port? Let's find out. The story of the game involves Sonic and his friends going after the Chaos Emeralds and conflict with Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman if you will, but the mad scientist has a new trick up his sleeve, an ancient water beast named Chaos, who has the power to consume Chaos Emeralds and gain more power. With that, Sonic and pals must work to stop Robotnik once again, and even with some characters having their own stories that add at least a little or not much at all. The plot is simple, but it works. In contrast to the main 2D platformers, Sonic Adventure does some changes in the series' transition to 3D. Rather than all the characters get similar platforming experiences with some differences in their abilities, rules of gameplay completely change for each character. Sonic has the more classic speed and platforming with a snowboarding mission and some on rails on the side. Tails, while has the same as Sonic, has most of his levels where he must race another character. Knuckles has a scavenger hunt, Amy Rose must run from a robot stalking her, Big the Cat just fishes, and E102 Gamma has some shooting. But of all the characters, I think Sonic and Tails have the best levels. I know, kind of cliche to say, but they feel like a fully realized 3D Sonic game, at least for its time. But I'll admit, even they have their flaws, like it's kind of needlessly sluggish to control them even with a controller. Meanwhile, Knuckles, while I appreciate the change from his platforming roots, I got kinda bored of scavenger hunting after a while. Amy being chased down doesn't feel all that thrilling after at least 2 levels, and Gamma's shooting stages are kinda sloppy with all the locking on before shooting, and even then with only limited aim. But the worst offender is Big the Cat. As his levels involve fishing, you really need the patience of fishing in real life to get through, at least almost. If it was a minigame, fine. It would just be on the side. But the fact that you have to do this in order to get all the campaign cleared up is just bad and feels like a major halt with the amount of action involved. Plus, Big can't fight worth a damn until Sonic Heroes. Thankfully, there are not many levels in this part of the campaign, so you don't suffer that much. Speaking of minigames, some can be found around a map like a bumper cart racer thing in an amusement park. Even the regular missions have shorter side missions to add to the emblems to collect. Not all of them are great, granted, but it's fine that they are there. But what also aren't great are the controls. The game plays best with a controller, as it was a console game when it came out initially. But still, there's something kinda sluggish about it, like there is a bit of delay every time Sonic and friends jump. That being said, it's way better than the clusterfuck that is the keyboard controls, which is what I first played the game with as a kid, as that was all available to me at the time, but gee whiz, it's awful. Above all, have a USB controller on hand, you will need it. Another thing to note are the visuals. Keep in mind, I never played the original version on the Dreamcast, but the 2010 port in particular has a weird mishmash of cleaner visuals from the original version, based on the videos I've seen, but with much of the main characters quote-unquote improved with a sort of weird cel shading look, which is just off-putting to say the least. What is kind of misleading is that this version still calls itself the Director's Cut, even if at least some of the content from the prior release was stripped. Notably, the unlockable mini compilation of Sega Game Gear games. Yeah, not every game on that compilation was great, but it was interesting to see Sonic in 8-bit, and having thrown in the 2003-2005 release made it a nice bonus. One thing does hold up about Sonic Adventure: the soundtrack, be it Open Your Heart by Crush 40 and even the level tracks by Jun Seno and his team. Another thing kind of addictive, at least I thought so as a kid, was raising little creatures called Chow. Overall, however, and despite the fact that I have some fun with it still, Sonic Adventure DX on PC sadly isn't a great experience, marked down by sloppy controls, and in the case of the 2010 port, being a misleading title from the prior release due to some stripped bonus content. Still, to Sonic fans like me, it's worth picking up to see where it all started in his 3D adventures.
This one took longer than I was hoping for. While I initially wanted to make this review after I finished my playthrough, it was then announced that the third Sonic movie would release December of this year, hence the holdup. With that in mind, and in contrast to the first game, how does Sonic's 3D platforming follow-up fare, mainly with these ports in mind? Let's find out. Sonic Adventure 2 follows Sonic as he is falsely accused of multiple crimes. As he runs from the military force called Gun, he discovers how he has been the subject of these false allegations as he runs into another Hedgehog named Shadow, causing all sorts of chaos, no pun intended. Shadow, of course, in an alliance with Dr. Ivo Robotnik, or Eggman, meanwhile being spied on by the thief Rouge the Bat, whom while playing along is in a race against Knuckles the Echidna to find the Master Emerald Shards. Both sides must race against time to stop one another, until they must unite to stop another deadly threat to save the Earth. It's more simple than it would initially show, but it still works. On to the gameplay, and like the first Sonic Adventure before it, Sonic Adventure 2 is a 3D platformer. With the changes here is that the story now focuses on two sides, the hero side, which is Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and the dark side, consisting of Eggman, Shadow, and Rouge. Each side having characters represent speed, treasure hunting, and mecha platforming. The cost? No hub world, which is honestly fine by me, as the hub world wasn't great in the first Sonic Adventure. The speed levels, like in the prior game, are as fine as ever and are just as exciting, if not just a little bit more over the first title. Probably as Sonic and Shadow didn't feel anywhere near as sluggish as the former did in Game 1, but I still hold a lot of the same criticisms, if not just a little more, for the treasure hunting levels. Still found it boring and a bit of a drag for the most part, but there is one level with Rouge the Bat that just plain pissed me off. In that, while you're infiltrating an island, you have a severe limited time trying to unlock safes trying to find the emeralds. It randomizes the whole time, and you hardly have any time to get bearings. I had to reset so many damn times. Ugh. Anyway, Tails and Robotnik have stages where they pilot mechs. It plays similar to the E102 Gamma stages in the first Sonic Adventure, so my criticisms with that stand here, with sloppy shooting made worse with sluggish platforming. And again, since mechs are involved, another case of I should like it, but I don't. At least there's no being chased by a robot. Or worse, fishing. But beyond that, there are extra modes. For single player, you can go back to the same levels you passed, not just for improving your score, you can revisit the same levels under different rule sets. Like for instance, in that level I hate so much from Rouge, you can find different treasure under a different time limit or find a missing Chow in Green Forest as Sonic. Speaking of the Chow, one of the things expanded on from the first game is the Chow Garden. Now when you raise the little darlings, depending on the alignment of the characters, they can grow into a Chow Angel or a Chow Devil. Ways you can train them is by grinding on extra levels and collecting animals they can fuse with and experience rods. You can also take them to school and check on their health with a doctor. You can also get in competitive sports with them, like a Chow Karate, where you can watch them fight, or a Chow Race. And how your Chow perform in these depend on how well you train them as well. Though I gotta say, seeing them cry when they lose does break your heart. It shouldn't be in the world of sports, but come on, the Chow are just babies! There is also multiplayer. Speedsters race one another, mecha pilots blast one another, which is far closer to fun I have with the mode. Treasure hunters still hunt, and it still sucks. And we have an unlockable kart racing mode, which, alongside the Sonic Drift games on Game Gear, served as a prerequisite to the amazing first two games in the Sonic and All-Stars racing series. Even the Chow modes are multiplayer compatible. I do, however, have a criticism against the re-release of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the PC, as the battle content, which is on the freaking GameCube disc, as a reason to buy the GameCube version if you didn't bother buying the Dreamcast version, let alone a Dreamcast. This port was based on said GameCube version, so whatever the reason Sega had for making the DLC, I do not know. But it's stupid. That did not need to happen. With all that in mind, it's time to talk the visuals, and mind you, like the first Sonic Adventure, having not played the original version, for a Dreamcast port to GameCube, it looked great with its color palette and detail. And the frame rate's pretty steady from GameCube to PC, at least with my laptop specifications. Of course, what holds up in even the worst of Sonic games is the sound, especially the music from Crush 40 crushing it with Live and Learn, the track for Green Forest, Knuckles' cheesy rap to seductive jazz for Rouge. It all sounds great as you expect. Overall, even as a port, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle is, in my view at least, a superior game to the first one. No hub world making the story flow better, cheesy dialogue and all, more content to do with little Chow babies, and of course, the speed-centered levels remain the best parts, though gripes remain with the same for treasure and mecha levels, in addition to some BS with the DLC of already existing content for the modern re-release. It's still worth playing.